Princess Talara's third heart fluttered erratically as she paced the length of her crystalline chambers for the 100th time. The translucent floors captured and refracted the light of Centauri Prime's twin suns, creating dancing patterns that usually soothed her anxiety. Today, they only reminded her of how many things could go wrong during the upcoming human delegation's visit. Your Grace, her chief advisor, Kevon, drawn from a corner, please maintain your composure. Your biochemical signals are becoming most distressing. His sensor stalks waved in disapproval, measuring the stress hormones she was releasing into the air. Talara paused before her reflection in the crystal walls. Her iridescent scales had taken on a distinctly greenish tinge of worry, rather than their usual royal blue. How can I maintain composure when everything I read about humans becomes more terrifying? Did you know they can survive multiple organ failures? Or continue fighting with broken limbs? Kevon's sensor stalks drooped slightly. Indeed, Your Grace, their homeworld's brutal conditions have produced equally brutal adaptations. However, they are now our allies, not our enemies. Allies who could tear through our strongest metals with their bare hands if provoked, Talara muttered, resuming her pacing. The diplomatic briefing files hovering in her neural display painted a frightening picture. Earth's gravity was nearly twice that of most habitable worlds, its atmospheric pressure crushing, its temperature variations lethal. The humans had evolved not just to survive there, but to thrive. She pulled up the personnel files of the delegation's security detail. Most were standard military profiles, until she reached Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen. The human's combat record made Talara's scales ripple with both fear and fascination. During the Nexus War, Chen had survived 3 weeks alone on a volcanic moon, protected a colonial governor with nothing but a broken rifle and improvised explosives, and earned decorations from 4 different alien species. Kevon, look at this, Talara said, projecting the file onto the chamber's walls. It says, Sergeant Chen disabled a Praxton war mech by climbing inside its thermal vents. The temperature in those vents exceeds our lethal threshold by several hundred degrees. Humans have remarkable heat tolerance, Your Grace. But that's not even the most impressive part. Talara continued, her third heart finally settling into a more regular rhythm as curiosity overtook anxiety. She then reprogrammed the mech's core systems while under fire. Our analysts spent years trying to crack Praxton encryption. How did a human soldier manage it in minutes? Kevon's sensor stalks twisted in the Centaurian equivalent of a shrug. Humans often exhibit what they call intuitive leaps in problem-solving. Most species find their thought processes incomprehensible. Talara absorbed this information, her scales shifting to a more contemplative shade of purple. The more she learned about humans, the more they defied conventional understanding. Their bodies were both fragile and indestructible, their minds both primitive and ingenious. They formed emotional attachments that violated every principle of logical behavior, yet those same attachments drove them to achieve impossible feats. Perhaps, she said slowly, I've been approaching this all wrong. We've spent so much time studying humans as a potential threat that we've forgotten they're now our greatest potential allies. A diplomatic perspective, Your Grace, Kevon approved. Though please remember all 78 formal greeting protocols we reviewed. Humans may be allies, but proper etiquette remains essential. Talara felt her anxiety returning as she recalled the intricate dance of human diplomatic customs. They changed based on factors as arbitrary as time of day and personal relationships that hadn't even been formed yet. Her scales began shifting back toward green. 3 hours until the delegation arrives, Kevon reminded her helpfully. Shall we review the protocols again?" Tilara's only response was a soft groan as she resumed her pacing, all three hearts once again beating an erratic rhythm against her chest. She had a feeling that no amount of protocol review would prepare her for the reality of meeting a human up close. The grand reception hall of the crystalline palace sparkled like a frozen explosion of stars, its faceted walls amplifying every movement and gesture of the assembled dignitaries. Tilara stood at the head of the reception line, her scales now a proper royal blue, though it took considerable effort to maintain the colour. The human delegation had arrived. She watched them approach, trying not to stare at their alien grace. Humans moved differently than any species she'd studied, a peculiar flowing motion that seemed to deny the very physics of their dense muscle structure. Leading the group was Staff Sergeant Chen, whose file had so captivated Tilara earlier. The human was smaller than Tilara had imagined, yet she moved with a predator's confidence that made the princess's third heart skip again. Chen wore the formal dress uniform of Earth's combined forces, dark blue fabric shaped to human military precision. Her black hair was pulled back severely, highlighting sharp cheekbones and eyes that missed nothing. "Your Royal Highness," the human delegation's leader began the formal introductions. "May I present Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen, appointed as your personal security liaison." This was the moment Tilara had rehearsed countless times. She began the traditional 78-step greeting protocol, raising her right hand to the exact angle that indicated respect for a warrior caste, while simultaneously lowering her sensor stalks to demonstrate royal acknowledgement. Then she made her first mistake. Her left hand, trembling slightly, rotated 15 degrees too far. In Centaurian protocol, this transformed the gesture from "welcome, honoured warrior" to "I find your choice of breakfast companions questionable." A horrified silence fell over the assembled Centaurian nobles. Kivon's sensor stalks went completely rigid. Tilara felt her scales beginning to shift toward mortified green, despite her best efforts to maintain composure. Then Sergeant Chen did something completely unexpected. She laughed, a warm, rich sound that somehow managed to be both respectful and genuine. "You know, Your Highness," Chen said, her dark eyes twinkling, "during my first diplomatic function, I accidentally told the Arcturian ambassador that his tentacles reminded me of my grandmother's favourite noodle recipe. At least your gesture was elegant, even if slightly misaligned." Tilara found herself laughing before she could stop herself, a most unroyal sound that made several nobles gasp. But Chen's easy smile and the shared moment of diplomatic embarrassment had broken through her anxiety. "Perhaps," Tilara said, abandoning the formal protocol, "we could start again with something simpler. Welcome to Centauri Prime, Sergeant Chen." "Thank you, Your Highness, and please call me Sarah." Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Tilara had studied this. Humans used physical contact to establish trust, though the practice seemed barbaric to most species. She hesitated only a moment before reaching out. Chen's grip was firm but careful, mindful of her superior strength. The rest of the reception proceeded more smoothly, though Tilara found herself constantly drawn back to Chen's presence. The human moved through the crowd of nobles with surprising grace, switching effortlessly between various alien protocols, while somehow making each interaction feel natural and unforced. "Remarkable, isn't it?" Kivon murmured, his sensor stalks indicating bewilderment. "She's maintaining 17 different cultural interaction patterns simultaneously, yet shows no sign of strain." Tilara nodded, watching as Chen smoothly prevented a minor diplomatic incident by redirecting an intoxicated Regelian ambassador away from a group of teetotaling vegan monks. The human made it look like a casual conversation, but Tilara recognized the subtle tactical positioning involved. "Perhaps," Tilara said softly, "all our briefings about human physical capabilities missed something more important. Their true strength isn't in their muscles or their tolerance for extreme conditions." "Oh." Kevon's sensor stalks tilted inquisitively. "It's in their ability to make the impossible look effortless," Tilara replied, watching Chen charm another group of normally reserved nobles into genuine laughter, "and in their gift for turning mistakes into opportunities." For the first time since the humans' arrival had been announced, Tilara felt her third heart beating with excitement rather than anxiety. She had a feeling her time with Sergeant Sarah Chen would be educational in ways no diplomatic briefing could have prepared her for. The attack came during the 7th course of the diplomatic feast, just as Tilara was attempting to explain the significance of crystalline architecture to Chen. The first sign was a subtle vibration in the chamber's walls, something only a Centaurian's sensitive scales would notice. Tilara barely had time to frown before Chen moved. One moment, the human was seated beside her, smiling politely at her explanation of geometric resonance. The next, Chen had launched across the table, tackling Tilara to the ground as plasma bolts seared the air where they'd been sitting. "Stay down," Chen ordered, her voice shifting from diplomatic pleasantness to battlefield command in an instant. She shielded Tilara with her own body as more shots filled the air with the smell of ionized particles. Tilara's 3 hearts pounded in asynchronous panic. Her enhanced Centaurian nervous system registered everything in vivid detail. The weight of Chen pressing her against the floor, the screams of dinner guests, the beautiful crystal walls fracturing under weapons fire. "When I move, roll left behind the serving cart," Chen instructed. The human's breath was steady despite the chaos, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "Your guards will be here in approximately 40 seconds. We need to keep you alive until then." "How do you know it will be 40 seconds? Tilara managed to ask. "Counted their patrol patterns during dinner. Now move." Tilara obeyed instinctively, surprised by her own response to the human's tone of command. As she rolled, she saw Chen spring into action. The human moved like liquid lightning, drawing a compact weapon that had been concealed somewhere in her dress uniform. 3 assassins had breached the hole, their stealth fields flickering as they tried to track the princess's movement. Chen fired twice. 2 of the attackers dropped, their shields failing against the unexpectedly primitive projectile weapon. Ballistic weapons at a diplomatic function. Tilara heard one of her nobles cry in horror. "How uncivilized." "Uncivilized works." Chen shouted back, diving behind a column as the 3rd assassin opened fire. "Your energy shields don't stop good old-fashioned lead." Tilara watched in fascination as Chen fought. The human's movements made no logical sense. She zigged when optimal combat algorithms would have called for a zag, fired at seemingly random moments that somehow caught the assassin off guard, and appeared to be humming what sounded like an ancient Earth battle song. The remaining assassin grew frustrated, his shots becoming less precise. "Why won't you move predictably?" he snarled in Centaurian. "Sorry," Chen replied in the same language, her accent perfect despite the combat situation. "Humans don't do predictable." She proved this by throwing her empty weapon at the assassin's head, a move so illogical it penetrated his shield, which was calibrated to stop energy weapons and high-velocity projectiles. The momentary distraction was all Chen needed to close the distance. The hand-to-hand combat that followed left Tilara breathless. The assassin was clearly augmented, his cybernetic enhancements putting him well above normal Centaurian strength. But Chen moved with that same impossible fluidity Talara had noticed earlier, never quite being where the assassin's enhanced combat computers predicted she should be. When the royal guards finally burst in, they found Chen sitting calmly on the unconscious assassin's back, using his own stealth cloak to tie his hands. She rose smoothly and bowed to Talara as if they were still at a diplomatic function. "My apologies for the interrupted dinner, Your Highness. I hope this doesn't count as a breach of protocol." Talara felt her scales shifting through several colours before settling on an amused violet. "I believe saving the princess's life grants some diplomatic latitude, Sergeant Chen." Sarah, the human, corrected with a smile. "I think getting shot at together puts us on a first-name basis." As the guards secured the scene and medical teams attended to the minor injuries among the guests, Talara watched Chen give a precise tactical briefing to the security chief. The human's earlier chaos resolved into perfect military clarity, yet another contradiction that made Talara's scientific mind spin. She had a feeling she was only beginning to understand just how unpredictable and fascinating humans could be. "That's impossible," Talara declared, her scales flickering between disbelief and frustration as she stared at the cards in her hands. "I'd calculated the exact probabilities. The statistical likelihood of you winning again is—" "Not everything is about statistics, Your Highness," Sarah Chen said, gathering the cards with practiced ease. Her quarters in the palace's secure wing had become their regular meeting place during the ongoing investigation. The simple metal table between them was littered with empty containers of both human and Centaurian refreshments. "Please, if we're playing Earth games, you must call me Talara." The princess watched intently as Chen shuffled the deck. "But I don't understand." "I memorized all possible card combinations. I tracked every discard. I even monitored your microfacial expressions, which humans can't consciously control." Chen's smile widened. "That's exactly why you keep losing. You're so focused on the details that you're missing the bigger picture. Poker isn't about perfect information. It's about imperfect information and how people react to uncertainty." Talara's sensor stalks drooped slightly. Humans intentionally make decisions with incomplete data. How do you achieve anything? "We achieve plenty precisely because we don't wait for complete data," Chen replied, dealing another hand. "Sometimes you have to trust your gut." "But humans don't have the secondary processing organ that Centaurians." Talara began, then caught Chen's amused expression. "Ah, another metaphor. Got it in one. Look at how you're holding your cards right now, perfectly arranged, exactly 11 degrees apart. Every time you get a good hand, you align them precisely. When you're bluffing, you spend exactly 2.3 seconds longer arranging them." Talara felt her scales flush with embarrassment. "I didn't realize I was being so predictable." "Don't feel bad. Most species have similar tells. Humans are just good at spotting patterns, even if we can't always explain how we know what we know." Chen rearranged her own cards randomly, a deliberate chaos that Talara now realized was its own kind of strategy. "Is that how you knew about the assassination attempt? Some pattern you noticed?" "Something felt off about the way certain nobles were acting at dinner. Nothing I could quantify, just little things. The way they kept checking the crystal walls, how they positioned themselves. Little pieces that added up to wrong." Talara considered this as she studied her cards. "Our security systems are based on detecting known threat patterns. Perhaps that's why they failed. The assassins knew exactly what patterns to avoid." "Exactly." Sometimes the most sophisticated systems can be defeated by simple unpredictability. That's why I carry a projectile weapon, even at diplomatic functions. Nobody expects ancient technology in a high-tech assassination attempt. Tilara attempted to deliberately hold her cards at random angles, fighting against her ingrained need for precision. Is that why humans are so successful in the galaxy? Because you're unpredictable. Partly, Chen said, raising the bet with a casual toss of tokens. But it's more than that. We learn to trust our instincts while still using our logic. Both, not either slash or call or fold. Tilara stared at her cards, then at Chen's deliberately casual posture. For once, she didn't calculate the odds or analyze microexpressions. Instead, she tried something new. She listened to the subtle flutter of her third heart, the one that humans didn't have but somehow seemed to understand better than she did. "Call," she said, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. Chen's grin widened as she revealed her cards. "See, perfect instinct. You just won your first hand." Tilara stared at their cards in shock, her scales shimmering with delight. "I did, but how did I know?" That's the beauty of it. Sometimes you don't need to know how you know. You just know. Chen started shuffling again, her movements deliberate but unstudied. Want to learn another human game? This one's called Hearts. Will it help me understand humans better? No promises, but it'll definitely be fun. Tilara found herself smiling, her scales settling into a content purple. She was beginning to understand that with humans, the journey of discovery was often more valuable than the destination of perfect comprehension. The Royal Training Arena hummed with the sound of combat computers processing data. Tilara stood at the observation platform, watching as her elite guards attempted to spar with Chen for the fourth time that morning. The results remained consistently inconsistent. System failure announced the arena's AI as Chen once again moved in a way that crashed the prediction matrices. Combat analysis impossible. Recalibrating. The guard currently facing Chen, a veteran named Murek, lowered his practice weapon in frustration. "How are you doing this?" "Our systems are designed to analyze and counter any known combat style." "That's the problem," Chen said, helping him up with a respectful nod. "You're looking for a style to analyze. I'm just moving." Tilara's sensor stalks quivered with interest as she watched the guards exchange confused looks. Their combat computers, implanted directly into their nervous systems, were the pinnacle of Centaurian military technology. They could process millions of combat variables per second, predicting and countering enemy actions before they occurred. Yet they couldn't handle one human soldier with a practiced sword. Again, Chen called out, settling into a ready stance that somehow managed to look both completely prepared and totally relaxed. "This time, try turning off your combat computers." The guards bristled, their scales shifting to patterns of shock and disbelief. "But that would be primitive," one protested. "Primitive works," Chen replied with a grin that Tilara was beginning to recognize as characteristically human. "Your princess can verify that." Tilara felt her scales flush, remembering the assassination attempt. The guards looked to her for confirmation, and she nodded. "Do as she suggests." Murek stepped forward again, reluctantly deactivating his combat computer. The other guards watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern as he raised his practice weapon. What followed was unlike any sparring match Tilara had ever witnessed. Without his computer's guidance, Murek's movements were less precise but more fluid. Chen matched him strike for strike, but instead of following any recognizable pattern, she seemed to flow like water around his attacks. "You're thinking too much," Chen called out as they circled each other. "Feel the rhythm of the fight. Don't try to calculate it." "I don't understand," Murek replied, launching a series of strikes that would have been perfect according to combat algorithms. Chen deflected them with movements that defied conventional physics. "That's exactly the point," Chen said. "Understanding comes after action, not before. Your bodies know how to fight. Trust them." Tilara leaned forward, her scientific mind struggling with this concept. Centaurians were taught from hatching that every action should be preceded by careful analysis. The idea of acting without understanding seemed completely backward. Yet she couldn't deny the evidence before her. As Marek gradually stopped trying to analyze and predict, his performance improved. His movements became less textbook perfect, but more effective. Twice he nearly landed strikes on Chen, something none of the guards had managed while using their combat computers. "Better," Chen exclaimed after finally disarming him. "You're getting it. Who's next?" To Tilara's surprise, all the guards stepped forward eagerly. Their scales showed patterns of excitement rather than frustration now. One by one, they deactivated their combat computers and began moving in ways that would have scandalized their combat instructors. "I don't understand," Tilara said softly as she watched. "Everything we know about combat efficiency suggests this shouldn't work." "That's because you're trying to understand it from the outside," Chen replied, somehow having hurt her despite the distance. "Some things can only be understood by doing them." She turned to Tilara with that challenging smile. "Want to try?" Tilara felt all three of her hearts skip simultaneously. "Me? But I'm not a warrior." "Neither was I, once upon a time." Chen held out a practice weapon. Sometimes the best way to understand something is to stop trying to understand it. Against every logical impulse, Tilara found herself walking down to the training floor. As she took the weapon from Chen's hands, she realized that perhaps this was what humans meant by trusting your gut, doing something not because it made sense, but because it felt right. "Your perfume selection is quite fascinating," Chen remarked casually during their evening card game, causing Tilara to nearly drop her cards. "My perfume?" Tilara's sensor stalks twitched in confusion. They were discussing security reports from the assassination attempt, a seemingly random change of topic, even by human standards. Chen laid down her cards, revealing another winning hand. "Yes, I noticed several nobles changed their scents dramatically in the days before the attack, switched from their usual subtle pheromone enhancers to something much stronger." Tilara's scales rippled with sudden understanding. The stressed maskers, of course. She activated her neural display, pulling up surveillance footage. Centaurian nobles use artificial pheromones to maintain proper social hierarchies. But some started using industrial-grade stress maskers, Chen finished. The kind usually reserved for deep cover operations. "I recognize the scent from my time working with Centaurian special forces." Tilara began cross-referencing the nobles in question, her third harp racing with excitement. "Look at this pattern. Lords Viker, Mintal, and Lady Shrin all changed their scents within days of each other. And they all attended private meetings in the Eastern Wing's meditation chambers. Where the crystal walls are thickest," Chen added, her dark eyes gleaming. "Perfect for avoiding electronic surveillance, but they forgot about good old-fashioned human nose. How did our security miss this?" Tilara wondered, scanning through more footage. Because they were looking for sophisticated conspiracy markers, encrypted communications, unusual financial transactions, suspicious travel patterns. Nobody thought to track perfume purchases. Tilara felt her scales flush with embarrassment. Sometimes the most obvious signs are the ones we overlook, aren't they? It's a common problem with advanced civilizations, Chen said kindly. You become so focused on complex solutions that you miss simple truths. Like how stress changes body chemistry, no matter how much you try to hide it. They spent the next hour building a web of connections, linking nobles whose behavior had changed subtly in the days before the attack. Chen's observations, seemingly random at first, painted a disturbing picture of widespread conspiracy. The question is why, Tilara mused, staring at the holographic display of suspected conspirators. These houses have always supported the throne. What changed? Chen gathered the cards, shuffling them absently as she thought. When did your father announce the Human Military Cooperation Treaty? 3 standard months ago. Oh. Tilara's scales shifted to a troubled grey. They're not against the throne. They're against humans. Makes sense, Chen said, dealing a new hand. We're unpredictable, dangerous. We don't fit neatly into their carefully ordered society. To some, that makes us a threat that needs to be eliminated. By assassinating me, I don't see the connection. Think about it. You're the first Centaurian royal to openly embrace human customs. Learning our games, training with our fighting styles, even laughing at our jokes. If you become queen, I might encourage more human influence in Centaurian society, Tilara finished. They're not just afraid of humans, they're afraid of change itself. Chen nodded. Fear makes people do desperate things. Even nobles who've spent centuries mastering emotional control. Tilara studied her cards without really seeing them. We need proof, something more substantial than changed perfumes and secret meetings. Already working on it, Chen said with a smile. Remember those stress maskers they're using? The chemical composition is unique to each manufacturer. And there's only one supplier on Centaur Prime with access to military-grade formulas. Tilara's scales brightened. The purchase records. Exactly. And I bet if we cross-reference those with the meditation chamber's crystal resonance patterns, we can prove they were meeting to plan the assassination, Tilara finished excitedly. Then she paused, her sensor stalks drooping slightly. I still can't believe we uncovered this whole conspiracy because you noticed a change in perfume. Chen laid down her cards, revealing yet another winning hand. Sometimes the biggest revelations come from the smallest details. Speaking of which, you're still adjusting your cards exactly 11 degrees apart when you're bluffing. Tilara looked down at her perfectly aligned cards and couldn't help but laugh. Some habits, it seemed, were harder to break than others. The crystalline palace shook with weapons fire as Lord Vikar's forces breached the outer defences. Tilara stood in the tactical command centre, watching as centuries of protocol and tradition crumbled under the assault of her own people. They've sabotaged the automated defence systems. Kavon reported, his sensor stalks rigid with stress. Combat computers across the palace are offline. Good, Chen said, striding into the room in full combat gear. The humans' usual diplomatic polish had been replaced by warriors' focus. That means they can't predict our movements either. Good, a noble sputtered. Our guards are trained to rely on combat computers. Without them, we can fight like humans, Tilara interrupted. She turned to her royal guards, who stood uncertainly by the doors. Remember your training with Sergeant Chen. Trust your instincts. Monrek stepped forward, scales shimmering with determination. The princess is right. We've learned to fight without computers. The rebels haven't. An explosion rocked the palace's western wing. Chen consulted a tactical display, her expression grim. "They're trying to force us into the central chamber." Classic pincer movement. "The logical response would be to fall back to the secure bunkers," Kevon suggested. "Then that's exactly what they'll expect," Chen said. "Tilara, remember that card game I taught you? The one where you win by playing the odds wrong?" Tilara's scales shifted to excited violet. "You want to bluff them." On a tactical scale, Chen turned to the guards. "Your combat computers would say this is suicide, but I need volunteers to do something completely illogical." Every guard stepped forward without hesitation. Tilara felt her third heart swell with pride. In just a few weeks, Chen had transformed her ceremonial guard into warriors who understood that sometimes the best move was the one no algorithm would suggest. The next hour was chaos by Centaurian standards, but, as Tilara was learning, perfectly human. Chen split their forces into small teams, each moving in patterns that defied conventional military logic. They struck at the rebels from impossible angles, retreated when they should have advanced, and generally caused havoc among enemies too dependent on predictable tactics. Tilara found herself in the thick of battle alongside Chen, putting her recent training to use. Her muscles remembered the lessons learned in the practice arena. Don't think, just move. Trust the flutter of your third heart. "My princess," Chen called out as they took cover behind a fractured crystal column. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but you're a natural at this chaos thing." Tilara deflected a plasma bolt with a move that would have scandalized her etiquette instructors. "I had a good teacher." They fought their way to the central chamber, where Lord Vicar had established his command center. The rebel leader's scales showed patterns of utter confusion as Tilara's forces seemed to materialize from nowhere, fighting with techniques no combat computer could predict. "This is madness," Vicar shouted as his forces fell into disarray. "You're fighting like humans." Tilara stepped forward, her scales gleaming with royal authority. "The species you fear so much. Look around you, Vicar. Look what your fear of change has brought to our perfect, ordered world." The rebel leader's scales dulled with defeat as Chen's forces surrounded him. His carefully planned coup, based on sophisticated algorithms and traditional military doctrine, had been undone by simple unpredictability. "Take them to the secure cells," Tilara ordered. As the rebels were led away, she turned to Chen. "I understand now what you've been teaching me. The true strength of humanity isn't your physical capabilities or your technology." Chen smiled, holstering her weapon. "Oh, it's your ability to thrive in chaos, to find patterns in randomness, and to know when breaking the rules is the wisest choice." Tilara's scales shifted to thoughtful purple. "Perhaps that's exactly what our society needs." "Speaking of breaking rules," Chen said, checking her tactical display, "we should probably do something about that plasma reactor they sabotaged. Any interest in learning some human-style emergency engineering?" Tilara found herself grinning, an expression she'd picked up from Chen. "Will it involve doing something completely illogical?" "Naturally." "Then lead the way, my friend. Lead the way." 3 months after the failed coup, Tilara stood before the Centaurian High Council, her scales shimmering with confidence as she presented her most controversial proposal yet. "The Royal Academy for Intuitive Arts," she announced, gesturing to the holographic plans floating above the council chamber. "A new institution where people can learn what I've come to call the human arts." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles, their scales shifting through patterns of confusion and curiosity. At the back of the chamber, Chen watched with poorly concealed amusement as her former student, challenged centuries of tradition. "With all due respect, Your Highness," one elderly councillor began, his scales a disapproving grey, "what possible benefit could we gain from studying human arts?" During the coup attempt, Talara replied, "Our advanced combat computers were turned against us, yet we prevailed thanks to guards trained in human combat techniques. That victory wasn't about physical strength or superior technology. It was about embracing a different way of thinking." She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show various training scenarios. "The Academy will teach more than just combat. Students will learn human games like poker, which train us to read emotional patterns our computers miss. They'll study human music and dance, arts that prioritize feeling over mathematical precision." "This is absurd," another councillor protested. "We are Centaurians, not humans. Our society is built on logic and order." "And that's precisely why we need this," Talara countered. "In an ordered universe, chaos becomes the greatest advantage. The humans have taught me that true wisdom lies not in rejecting disorder, but in learning to dance with it." She noticed Chen hiding a smile at her choice of words. The human had spent countless hours teaching her to dance, an activity that still confused and delighted her three hearts. "Look at our history," Talara continued. "Every major crisis we faced came from something our logical systems couldn't predict. The Nexus War, the Quantum Plague, and yes, the recent coup attempt. Each time, it was human unpredictability that saved us." The council chamber fell silent as her words sank in. Even the most traditional nobles couldn't deny the truth of her statement. "But what of our traditions?" someone asked softly. "Our ways?" "They remain," Talara assured them, her scales glowing with passionate conviction. "I'm not suggesting we become human. I'm suggesting we learn from them, as they have learned from us. Sergeant Chen can quote our most ancient philosophers and navigate our most complex social protocols. Why should we not show the same respect for their ways?" She nodded to Chen, who stepped forward and demonstrated a perfect ceremonial bow, her movements flawlessly matching Centaurian custom. Then, with a grin, she shifted into a human dance step that somehow made the formal gesture seem both alien and perfectly natural. "This is what we can become," Talara declared. "Not less Centaurian, but more complete. A people who can calculate the odds, and then choose to defy them. Who can process 1,000,000 variables and still trust our third hearts." The council chambers buzzed with discussion. Talara felt Chen move to stand beside her, a subtle show of support that meant more than any formal alliance. "When I first met Sergeant Chen," Talara said softly, yet her words carried to every corner of the chamber, "I was terrified of humans. Their unpredictability, their emotional nature, their casual defiance of logic, everything about them seemed chaotic and dangerous." Her scales shifted to a deep, royal blue shot through with highlights of human-like warmth. "I was right. They are all those things. But that's exactly why we need them. In a universe of increasing chaos, those who can embrace uncertainty become the strongest." The council voted unanimously to approve the Academy. As the nobles filed out, many stopping to congratulate her, Talara turned to Chen with all three hearts beating in perfect, joyful synchronization. "So," she said, "ready to become a professor of human arts?" Chen's smile was answer enough. "Only if you'll be my first student in advanced chaos theory." "Always," Talara replied, her scales shimmering with all the colors of their shared future. "Always."